BDO has 29 classes and 54 playable specializations, and picking which class to play next can be a daunting task because there are just so many options and varieties. So in this video, I'm going to help you guys out and give you my opinions on what my top 5 classes are for the beginning, mid-game, and end game. It's crazy to think that a game like BDO, that it's surpassed the number of classes even MapleStory has. I think MapleStory has like 48 or 50 classes now. So like having 54 playable specializations, I think there's no other MMORPG which comes close to how many varieties we have. And which each class, you know, there's different considerations that come into play at different stages of the game. Some classes are more attuned to grinding pack to pack, using their high mobility and going really quickly through the rotation, while others are more suited for standing still in one spot in a tower rotation and just DPSing as mobs spawn up. So as you go through beginning, mid-game, and end game, you'll come across different rotations and different grind spots which are more lucrative and more beneficial for you at that point. So you might think about, you know, switching to a different class to be able to grind more efficiently and progress through those stages of the game a bit quicker. Or otherwise, you might just want to change the scenery and want to pick a new class and learn it and play the game in a different perspective. And that's one great thing about having so many classes. You know, this is a very boring game at the core of it. You're just running in circles, grinding mobs. But when you change a class, you know, it gives you a different perspective. It feels different. And once again, you know, even after you played for 1,000 hours, if you change classes, it feels fresh again. So that's why I'm making this video. I want to help you guys out by giving you my opinions on what I think are the top 5 classes at each stage of the game. So if anyone has any recommendations for different classes they would pick, I would love to hear them. I mean, that's the whole point of this video, is for me to give you my perspective of these different classes, and the more perspectives we can get, you know, the more help we can provide to players choosing their class. You know, hey, you have to make that choice for yourself. Whether it's right or wrong, you can always change your class, so you don't need to worry about that. But at the end of the day, you have to choose which class entertains you, which aesthetic you like, which playstyle you like, which kind of APM requirement you like. That's a personal choice. I can't tell you exactly which to play, and the more perspectives we hear, you know, it might help more people. So let me know in the comment section down below. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right, first section, beginner classes. At the beginning, the early stage of the game, there are a lot of varieties of classes in this game, and some of them take a lot more effort to learn, to execute, and some take high APM, some are low APM, some are tuned for standing still and grinding, some are much better oriented for pack to pack. So when you have 54 options, it can be hard to pick which one to start off, and it might feel like you're making a mistake by picking the wrong class in the beginning, but it's not. You can always switch. And me, I have one of every class over level 61, and a lot of endgame players do that because there's always some events that are coming up that help you level up quicker. You can tag characters and power level your alts by just keeping them tagged, and also getting up your family fame is really important in this game. It's a really good bonus to have with the marketplace bonus and item drop rate and everything. So if you pick a class that you feel is wrong or is not on this list, or it's not as viable in the early game, don't feel bad. But here's my recommendations for the top 5, and it's no order specifically here. These are just the 5 best classes that I would recommend. So number 1 is Succession Zerker. Succession Zerker is a main class of mine that I used to main for many months, and I loved it. He is amazing. He has great mobility, great survivability. He's very tanky, a lot of self-healing potential, huge AoE potential. You know, very easy to play. You don't have to do the full max DPS rotations in the early games for a lot of classes, so you'll be flying through pack to pack, spin to win, or just hold RMB in a lot of situations. But it's a very powerful class, and many a times in seasonal Arsha, I just get ganked by some Suck Zerker that just comes out of the blue, just jumps me and runs away. So in the early stages, especially in the Tuvala stages, Suck Zerker scales really well. Next up, number 2, I recommend Awakened Musa. Awakened Musa has some great mobility. He is the simplest of mobility classes. Just hold RMB, he just zooms, right? So he's very quick in that regards, and when you're in the early game stages, you're going pack to pack very quickly. So he's really viable for that stage of the game. Just his skill set is pretty simple. So, you know, you hit a skill, doesn't affect. There's no insane combos you have to do. There's no effect stacking or anything. It's just a simple, straightforward class, and he does it really well. Number 3, Awakened Dosa. Now, when Dosa came out, I really liked him as Succession, and I was hoping for something entirely different for Awakening, but you know, it wasn't really the case. They turned him into an Avatar style class, and you know, it didn't really sit well with me until I tried it out. And you know, he's a solid class. The reason I recommend him, he's probably not the most efficient in the early stages of the game, but he's a class that you can play throughout early, mid, and late game, and he does pretty well. So he's pretty much a solid pick that will last you a long time. So the advantages for him is he's an easy class to learn. His skill rotation is very short, very easy to pick up. He has good damage and very nice circular AoEs. All right, next up, number 4 is my recommendation. Is a age-old recommendation I've been recommending for many years because she is such a good grind class, and that is Succession Lan. She is a very consistent DPS class, has good mobility pack to pack, not the fastest, but she'll get you wherever you need to go, no problem. And her skill rotation is also very short. It's a very spin to win style rotation where you don't have to learn a huge 8 skill, 10 skill rotation in order to do optimal damage. So especially in early game when you're just, you know, getting the hang of the game, learning all the mechanics of the game, you don't want a class that's too complicated. So she does really well. She's also a class that does well into mid game and late game. And finally, number 5, some people might not agree with this, but I personally think this class is one that is a really good starting class for players if they want to play a range class, and that is Megu. Succession Megu to be specific. Succession Megu has really nice AoEs, a decent range, and really decent pack-to-pack mobility. She's pretty much the whole package there. All she's missing is like a grab. But in terms of PVE, she'll do really well all the way to late game. I think she's a solid pick even now. Once you get to the very end game, you know, she might taper off in terms of the DPS potential, but that's a very long road. You know, she'll carry you well through the mid game to the end of mid game, no problem. So yeah, that's my top 5 beginner classes in BDO: Succession Zerker, Awaken Musa, Awaken Dosa, Succession Lan, and Succession Megu. Now guys, important note before we get back to the video: grinding in BDO can be quite intense over a long period of time. The amount of inputs you enter per hour while grinding exceeds even some esports games, so you want to keep yourself safe by maintaining good body posture, and there's no better way than to have the right gaming chair. Allow me to introduce you to DXRacer's Black Desert Edition gaming chair. And guys, I was skeptical at first when I first saw the pictures, but the moment I got my hands on this chair and checked out the quality of the build, my mind was blown. The pictures just did not do it justice, and I had no idea that all of this amazing design you see on the chair is actually stitch work, and it feels and looks amazing. The upholstery is EPU leatherette, and it has some great texture, and the firmness of the chair is absolutely perfect. And on top of that, we got this incredible Black Desert lumbar support pillow, which looks amazing, and it also feels amazing. It is just so perfectly shaped. And lastly, the DXRacer pillow is so plush and soft, and it's way better than the leatherette head pillows I tried with competitors. This chair screams luxury and is worth every penny. Now let's get back to the video, but if you want to check this out, the link's in the description down below, and use my discount code Pansy to save 5% off. And later, I'll show you exactly how easy it was to assemble this chair. All right, here's part 2. We're at the mid game. So mid-game class requirements are going to be a bit different to early game. In early game, it's going to be very much pack-to-pack oriented. There are some spots which aren't pack-to-pack related, but you know, for the most part, you'll have a bit more variety when you get to the mid-game. And the type of classes that really shine here are the ones that are consistent, because there are some spots you might feel you're lacking AP for, and there's some spots that you are decimating and you're tapping really easily. In early game, a lot of the spots you're going to be destroying. Once you're full Pentavala, you're pretty much over the gear score requirements for a lot of those beginner spots, and you can grind through them really easily without doing your full DPS rotations. Now in mid game, you're going to be focused on using your DPS rotations, or at least pseudo rotations, depending on the size of the pack, density of the mobs, and which spot you're grinding. Some spots have empowerments like Elvia Orcs, where you need to maintain your lights and stuff, and you can get the Elvia weapons, and all those empowerments will change how you're doing your DPS rotation. you might even see videos of players showing, hey, this is the best DPS rotation for a class, and they're in like Tungrad Ruins at the end game, and that rotation might not be the most optimal DPS rotation for you in a mid game spot, because regardless of which class you're playing, depending on the AP bracket you're at, you might not need to do a full rotation in order to kill the mobs. So in other times, you might have to do more than the full rotation. So when it comes to mid game, you'll want a class that can do pretty much both. Do full maximum DPS as well as do pseudo rotations and still be optimal pack to pack depending on the spot you're grinding at. So you'll see a few of the classes from the previous list, but there's going to be some new additions here as well. So number one, once again, Succession Lawn is just such a good class. She moves well pack to pack, and when it comes to the tankier mobs, she does have the DPS to be able to kill them pretty decently. Then you have Succession Megu, who's still really strong in mid game. She falls off after you get to the end game a bit. She's still a decent class. I mean, by no means is she like B tier or C tier or something low, but other classes really start shining when you get to the end game stage. But Succession Megu, once again, she has more than enough mobility and AoE and damage in order to carry you through the mid game. Now here's a new addition that is going to be Succession Sage. I really like Succession Sage in mid game spots because you're at the point where you can still stack so much damage that you'll be able to blow up mobs quickly, but also you're going to be coming up to like odd looking rotations where it's not just immediately within one click away to get to the next pack. You might have to go a bit of a distance, but the fact with Succession Sage, you can use his range, you can use his AoE size, and you can really play around with a lot of the different grind spots there pretty well. He's pretty versatile in that regard. So I really like Succession Sage in mid game, especially back in the days when I was grinding like Elvia Giants and stuff. He did really well there, but maybe that spot's fallen out of favor now with Honglam and stuff. The Honglam base, I mean, you don't really need anything else, right? Anyway, next up, once again, I'd like to shout out Awakened Dosa. Pack to pack, he's good. He has strong AoEs, big circular AoEs, and he does great damage. Very simple to play, and it's not a high APM class. So when you're looking at mid game, you're going to start seeing your progression start slowing down depending on the type of upgrades you're going for. You're going to have to grind more hours. So picking a class that is a comfortable APM for you is going to be the way to go. If you want to make it to the end game or to the actual pinnacle of the game in terms of gear, you're going to have to grind a lot of hours. So you want to make sure you're picking a class that is something you can sustain. And number 5, we're going to finally bring out the new chick on the block. That is going to be Deadeye. Deadeye was a pretty anticipated class because they finally allowed for guns in the game, even though we had guns in the forms of muskets and hunting rifles for a long time. They finally relented and gave us a gunner class. Unfortunately, it's not really my taste, but she's strong. She's really strong. She has good AoEs. She has decent mobility, not the best in terms of mobility, but she's decent, and her damage is just effortless. I mean, you press a button and she shoots out so many shots in such a big AoE. She's able to get by body collision without too much issue. She's able to rotate around mobs and keep up her buffs. She's just a complete package. And I guess that's what PA was going for, you know? Female DPS classes make the most money for them in terms of revenue. And, you know, Deadeye earns her keep. She does really well. And once you start moving into endgame, that's when she truly shines. So Deadeye is definitely a solid pick. All right, now let's take a quick breather and admire how easy it was to assemble this absolute throne of a chair. It literally took minutes, guys. All I had to do was first assemble the base. Really easy to attach all the parts, attach the wheels to the base, and then we attach the seat and the backrest. They give you all the tools you need, and even the tool is so high quality. It's like they made it as easy as possible. And lastly, once you have the seat assembled, you just have to attach the base and boom, it's easy as that. If you are looking for a high-end, high-quality chair while repping your favorite MMORPG, once again, this is the Black Desert Online chair by DXRacer. Honestly, I should just call it a throne because that's what it is. Check out the link in the description down below once again, and use the code Pansy if you want to save some money. Now let's wrap up the video. And finally, the end game. These are the top 5 picks for me in terms of end game classes in BDO. And I'm going to start off by saying the best class to play is the class you enjoy, because now you're at the stage you really need to put in time and effort. You're going to need to play this game like it's a second job, or you're going to have to play it for a very long time, very consistently. But regardless, the most important thing is that you have fun with your class. And no one can tell you which class is fun for you unless you try it yourself. One thing I didn't talk about much earlier in the video, and I'm saving it for this point, is because now you'll understand when I say this. Skill matters. Just because someone on a video is pulling like 35k trash loot at some spot and other people are pulling like 25k, that doesn't mean you're pulling 35k just because you're playing that class. You have to be good. You have to put in the time to be really efficient and really solid with your class. You have to know your skills in and out. You have to know your kit in and out. You have to be really on top of it to be able to pull the max amount of loot. And when you start looking at garmod.com, you'll see a pretty big disparity between classes. That doesn't mean just because a class is showing less on garmod.com that it's not viable. Class certainly is viable. Maybe all the good players, all the skilled players who really try to parse hard, they're in those other classes which are meta right now. And maybe any one of them could take an average class and make it, you know, A+. Who knows? But that's not important. What's important is that you don't burn yourself out and you enjoy the journey that you're on. So pick a class when you're at the end game, a class that you enjoy. Maybe you like to PvP on the side. Maybe you need a class that you can just relax, and maybe you tag another class which you can go, you know, maximum efficiency whenever you're up for it. But at the end of the day, it's your choice. But here are my top 5 classes for the end game, just to give you my perspective on things. So number 1, obviously Deadeye. Deadeye is just such a good class right now. She's a new class, and I know they made some changes that people didn't like, but I think even after those changes, she's still pretty strong. She has everything in her kit that, you know, is really attuned for end game grinding and the current meta of the game. So Deadeye, number 1 right there. Next one is Succession Witch. It's a class that I mained for a pretty long time. I mean, almost a year, right? I played both Awakening and Succession, and Succession is one of those classes that it takes time and you need to build up muscle memory and intuition with that class. But once you do, he flies. It's one of those classes, like, she reminds me of the OG Suck Striker back in like 2021, 2020. Back then when I was playing Suck Striker, you know, I would be able to just hit the keys faster and I'm doing more damage. It felt like I didn't have that limit. The ceiling felt really high, that I wasn't just, you know, immediately hitting the best rotation and I was capped out in how fast I could go. I felt like I could keep going faster. And that's what Suck Witch made me feel like. She's one of those classes which has really high damage, but you have to put in the effort because her skills come off really quick. And it is a pretty decent APM class, and, you know, you have to make sure that you're on top of it, because if you miss a key and then you hard cast a skill, that's DPS loss. So it's just go with her. But she's a really good class, very powerful, very capable at the end game. All right, number 3, we got Awakened Nova. She pretty much is the same thing as Witch. She is one of those classes, just those rapid fire, go. And, you know, she has pretty decent super armors, right? So she's not completely out in the open in endgame. Like with Suck Witch, I felt like some protections were lacking, that I had to constantly move around the pack and position myself well. And you can't just like face tank, because in those high-end spots where, you know, that you're really pushing it in terms of gear and you get caught off on a CC, that could be death. But with Awakened Nova, she's also a class that moves really well, and she has decent super armors, and she has insane damage. She's one of those classes that is a hyper carry, in my opinion, that she just goes. But once again, skill is a factor here. Just rolling Awakened Nova isn't going to give you the best loot. You got to practice. So very few Awakened Nova at the very top are pulling insane numbers, but at the same time, it takes effort to get there. So don't forget that. All right, number 4, Awakened Dosa. I think Awakened Dosa has been on every tier of this list, like beginner, mid game, and end game, just because how cheesy his kit is. I mean, that's my personal opinion. I don't mean to offend anyone, but bro, he just jumps in there, circular AoEs, small skill rotation where it's just a few skills you got to remember, and great damage, amazing damage. I mean, I think he's been he was much more devastating when he first came out, but he's still a solid class. I think it's a class that you can grind for many hours for a long time, and, you know, not have to go super sweaty like with a Suck Witch or Awakened Nova. Or the next one on my list, and the final one on my list, which is, you know, a sweaty class, because you have to put in effort to get the best out of it, and that is going to be Awakened Sork. Awakened Sork is a class that really shines when it comes to endgame spots. You're doing a full damage rotation, or at least most of your damage rotation, and she can put out damage really quick, but she's also pretty squishy. You got to be careful. You have to play her well. Now, there's a lot of classes like that you can add on to this list, but this is my personal recommendation. You can easily put like a class like Succession Ninja on this list, but let's be real, comparing a class like Succession Ninja, who does insane DPS output, but you have to input like twice as many skill or 3 times as many skills as like an Awakened Dosa or a Deadeye. I mean, like in the end game, when you're trying to get to that peak gear of like deck sovereigns and deck Karazads, that's a long grind, man. I can't recommend, you know, a class like that. I mean, Awakened Nova and Suck Witch is as far as I'll go in terms of recommending a class like that, but there are other classes that can do really well. Awakened Mystic is a really good grind class. I mean, she's just a solid class all around. But I feel like if you're looking for specifics, like what class is good in the beginning stage, what class is good at mid game, and what class is at good as end game, I don't think like she's number one in anything. There are some spots that we're seeing in Garmoth that Awakened Mystic's pulling really ridiculous numbers, but I think she's like a solid A+ class that's throughout the game. And there's a lot of classes like that, and it really depends on how you play and how well you know your class. So even if you don't see your class on this list or on a tier list or somewhere, pick the class you're happy with. You can always tag a new class. You can always experiment. If you're committing to a class, it doesn't matter what any content creator says. What matters is what's here and how it makes you feel when you're playing the class, and that you enjoy your time. Because regardless of what someone says about the game, whether it's going downhill or it's doing great, who cares? Have fun. That's what matters. So anyway, guys, let me know in the comment section down below what your opinions are with these different classes and in these different stages of the game, and I want to hear what your top 5s are as well. So let me know in the comment section. I'll catch you guys next time. My name is Pansy. Peace.